What's up, Internet? Another spinner shootout. Wanted to revisit this one since I got this copper. Try Thraxx. And it's super fidgetable. A little heavier than stainless steel, a little closer in terms of weight to this guy. So this makes for a much more compelling argument in terms of trying to compare these two. So let's get on with the show, shall we? Maybe we'll have this guy just for, what's the word I'm looking for? I don't know, I can't think of the word I'm looking for. But anyway, let's talk about these guys. So when you look at these guys, you can see where the inspiration was. Now this is obviously the Very Dapper by Kepler, and it was mentioned as being inspired by the Thraxx. So it draws a lot of similarities from these. Most notably, some of the most noticeable things is basically the shape of the arms with having this sort of design in them. So this is my one I did a mirror polish on more or less, and then just the patina it's gotten over time. But it has these little, this visual thing of these cutouts here, and then it's got these little bridges on the arms. And that's really about where the similarities stop. So on this one, obviously, and then I guess it's raised weights on the arms, not like a bevel or anything like that. So this has holes cut out, and this bridge is kind of one continuous swoop, where this is almost like two little bridges. So there was a little bit of, I think, drama when this came out, just claiming it was a clone. And I don't know, that's a debate for another day in terms of where does inspiration and inspired by, yet still a different spinner versus clone come in. So anyway, this is going to feel, be honest, we'll cut to the chase here, going to feel a little bit like my Stubby and Biton comparison, where despite looking alike, that's about where the similarities end. There's so much different between these guys. So as far as arms go, these are a little longer and a little narrower. These are a little shorter and a little wider. As far as weight goes, now brass is very comparable in terms of weight to copper. Copper? Yeah. 94 grams, see? 73 grams, see? So it's about a 10 gram difference, and then just for... Alright, so we're about 10 grams again. So this is definitely a heavier spinner. But in terms of how they feel and how they fidget, this guy is really fun to fidget with. So we're going to talk about this guy for a minute, because he kicks in around the $30 range. Plus you can find discounts and stuff like these. They're pretty readily available, come in a couple different materials. So this is definitely a real bang for your buck bargain. It's definitely in like the entry level, like definitely one of the spinners I would consider like, hey, you're thinking about getting into fidget spinners? This is one that I recommend a lot. Depending on the type of material, because of the taper in the arms, you really can push. Now, when I did first get this, there were some hot spots here. They've since been taken care of, but this does fidget really well. It's got a really smooth spin. I have the bearing that came with it. Gets good spin times. It does pretty cool warps. It's got like a nice spin characteristic with those concentric circles, but it is a little bit on the heavy side, obviously, especially in the brass, and it takes a little bit to get going. Like, you really need to put a powerful flick forward because you got a fair amount of weight to move. So from a fidgetability standpoint, this one walks all over it. The cutouts in here just really reduce that weight on the arms, obviously, but it really gives it a really amazing fidgetability. The arms are still long enough. These bridges on this one, without needing to be sanded down or taken care of on this media blasted version, do what they're supposed to do. They just give you a little bit extra in there. Now, I think with my shaped fingers, I think I'd still be able to get in there pretty good, but the bridges are, a cool little design aesthetic, and they do offer a little bit to your fingers getting in there and giving them something to kind of pull off on without actually rubbing up against the button. Buttons on this guy are amazing. So the button game on the Thraxx, the buttons alone, I think are worth, they definitely are. They cost $35, but I think, once you've been in the spinner game for a minute, you can really start to appreciate buttons where these are pretty much just virtually identical to the Spinetic buttons, just with a different laser engraving on there. But yeah, the fidgetability on this guy is where it's at, and that's what you get these guys for. Still has a good spin time. So this one, I think I get close to, on a really good spin, 9 minutes on a vertical spin, where this gets close to 7 without being cleaned. But that's still plenty for what you're looking for. A little smaller in the profile, so a little more pocketable. This has a glued-in bearing, as opposed to this one having that bearing retention, that vertical press. Right, we know what we're looking at here. Right, so that's standard there. Now this has cutouts on the inside of the arm, I think, which leads to having more spin time. There's more mass. The mass is more located on the outside, where these arms are cut in here, so not designed for the most spin time, but still gets really good spin time. They've got a really good quality bearing in here. Again, if you remember my stainless steel version, I had a bit of an issue with the bearing, but since getting that replaced, it's been really, really nice. So, oops, sorry. And you can actually see they have, I appreciate bearings that are doing this, so where there's actually something on the bearing so you know which bearing it is. So I believe Hex Super Bearings or Super Bearing version 2s are going to have a laser engraved on the side, which is awesome. Sweet. Love you, Heck. Kisses. Anyway. And when we did the spinner shootout, again, this is sort of when I talked about it the first time, it really was about the difference in price, was really what it comes down to. This, no question, is a higher quality spinner. It just kind of, it has that feel to it. And again, I think it's something you don't really appreciate unless you have a lot of spinners. So, but you can feel the difference in this. This has the better fidgetability. At a certain point, you just end up having to pay more for that. So I think someone made some good analogies, like a Honda Civic, a Ferrari isn't, 40 times the car. A Honda Civic is, it doesn't go 40 times as fast. It doesn't have anything that's 40 times as good, other than like it's just a luxury item, and it's the same thing we're talking about here. So basically what it comes, ooh, sorry. Let's make sure I didn't destroy this, because this isn't my spinner. I think we're good. If it is destroyed, Cody, you let me know, I'll pay for it. Yeah, what it comes down to is if you're kind of getting into the spinner game, or you're not 100% sure, you don't want to spend a lot of money, or even if you do, this is a good spinner for the value. So this is one that I think pretty much everybody should pick up and have on hand. With what it costs and with as good as it is, this is just a crazy value. So it's not so much like, is this one worth $100 more than this one? It's this one is probably worth more than a $30 spinner. Would suggest it's one of those quality ones that you see recommended a lot when someone's getting into spinners, with good reason. So this guy here, though, is that next level. So once you start getting into the high-end spinner game, for the same reason, this is one you really should be adding to your collection. So it's got great fidgetability, it's got great ergonomics, doesn't have any hot spots, spins really well. Doesn't matter your fidgeting style, it feels really nice. The cutouts on these arms lead to some really cool patterns where you can kind of see through it, and it kind of looks like you've got floating rings, where this gives you good concentric circles, right? But it's not the same sort of thing as you get with this, or in particular, I really like it on the mirrored one, right? Because you still see that mirror, but yet you still see through the spinner, right? Like, and again, I put a mirror finish on the face of these, which isn't too hard to do on the machine finish. So these just have the fidgetability factor of the Thraxx. Walks all over this guy. That's not to say that this guy isn't great. This guy's just that next step up. So spinner shootout. If you're into collecting high-end spinners, this belongs in your collection. If you're getting into spinners or just want to have a well-rounded collection, this belongs in your collection. So there's no reason not to get the very Dapper. This is not a replacement for this. These have very different feels, very different characteristics, despite having some similar looks to them. So yeah, I think that's really all we need to say. So try Thraxx. I kind of wasn't 100% on board, if you remember me talking about it when I first got this one, because I got that machine finished. But after fixing that, the Thraxx is an amazing spinner. So I'm kind of a little disappointed almost in myself. I didn't have this really fixed before we talked about it. But again, that's a good thing to kind of talk about it out of the box. So you get the media blasted, or if they offer the machine finish again, just be ready to put just a tiny bit of work into it. But I love the look of this guy. Like, we'll see what happens when I talk about my top spinners for the month of August and see where that guy ends up. So, but yeah, all three of these great spinners. So can't say enough good stuff about them. So I know I said it before. We'll wrap on it. High-end collection, this belongs in there. Any collection, this belongs in there. So anyway, love you guys. Hope that answers some questions. If you do have any other questions or any other shootouts you want to see, I've got a couple ideas for shootouts coming up. But obviously, feel free to let me know what you want to see down below. Because I like doing these kind of videos, and I don't see many other people doing head-to-heads on spinners. So I think that's something that we can keep going here on the old Hobby Timmy channel. So all right, love you guys. Kisses.